Hey, we want to open up to everybody here at this point. If you want to ask Sarah anything, or if you want to comment on anything she said, this is your chance to do so. Uh, so thanks, Sarah. And by the way, I have a very similar belief in terms of the afterlife, in terms of like how people will be held accountable for what they did, and they will have to work through things and correct things and better themselves. But I can't believe in this concept of eternal damnation, where there is a pain and suffering for the rest of your life, into all eternity, not just the rest of your life, for all eternity. It's just a concept
Exactly.
I just can't believe in it. Yeah. Is there
I agree.
anybody else who would like to? I think Dennis unmuted himself. Go ahead, Dennis.
Yes, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for so freely sharing your history. You said it real clear, and I'm encouraged to. You were talking a little bit earlier about as you were growing up and spending time with your mom, talking about things as probably during your high school, teenage years. In terms of you began to see the importance of relationship and importance of relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ and what he came to do and to bring us back into right relationship with himself as well as with the Father. So thank you for saying that. In terms of it's rejoicing to, it's good for us to hear how the Lord brought you on in terms of the progression of your journey, and he'll continue to do that as you grow in your relationship with him. So
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think some people can get lost in these theories and all the rules. Yes. And forget that the whole foundation is on their relationship. So that's definitely where I find that my basis is rooted in.
I'd like to ask Sarah if she'd ever thought of the fact that there is good evidence of what hell is, and we're in it. In fact, actually, Shakespeare, I found out that discovered there's a quote out of the Tempest, which I wasn't as familiar with the other works of Shakespeare, and I just ran across it relatively recently. But there's a line in the Tempest that we're in hell here, and all the devils have come here. And I think that I had a kind of an intuitive feeling that was really the truth of things. I think the more with our medicine of today, we have more and more people have near-death experiences. And I've been fascinated for 30 years about consciousness not being really connected to the physical body. Most people don't seem to understand that or deal with that, but and that most of the people that have the overwhelming majority of people that have near-death experiences don't want to come back. It's only kind of obligations that bring them back. So that to me is another evidence. Yeah, there is a hell. We're in it.
That is a good point. I know we often think of hell as like a place down below and all this stuff, but especially with this year 2020, it definitely can feel like that's where we are at right now. But I have definitely heard or read numerous stories of what you were saying, of people who have had near-death experiences and said that it was just all peaceful, and that there was no fear, there was nothing, in that sense that they needed to worry about. And so I think that's a really good point. You don't really read many stories of people who have near-death experiences and that it was a bad vision or physical connection that they had.
Hi, Sarah. I was just wondering if your parents argued a lot about different between the two religious philosophies, or if they just had a lot of lively discussions, or how that was like.
Yeah, no, they actually more so had a lot of discussion / support for each other. I know my mom sometimes felt like she was a little more not as, I don't want to, the word's not appreciated, but that her religion wasn't as emphasized as my dad's, because there's a lot more within the Catholic religion that you see celebrated in today's world necessarily, especially actually within our area, like I was talking about earlier, than you do in the Jewish community. But my dad is super supportive of my mom, and actually like when the holidays start coming around, we start decorating for Christmas, he's pulling out the Hanukkah stuff and putting that all up. And so it's actually kind of cool that he is very supportive of her, and then she's also very supportive of him. And you know, when we sit down for dinner at Christmas time, she's the one who says like, you know, how about we say grace? And you know, so I think it's definitely actually helped them kind of form connections, and that's what helped them lead to a middle path of Methodist religion, was, you know, working together on supporting each other in their different religions.
Sarah, I'm curious, have you ever been on a birthright trip to Israel, or is that something you would consider doing in the future if you haven't?
So I've had people reach out to me about it. I've never actually gone on one, but that is something I do really want to partake in. My cousin actually went on one 2 years ago, and she said it was life-changing for her, and she wasn't super strictly Jewish either. But it's definitely something that I've wanted to partake in, just so that I can feel a little more in depth about the Jewish community and just see everything that it's about. I think it's something that is very rewarding for everyone that I've talked to that has gone on one, especially in the area that I'm at right now, right outside of Philadelphia. There's actually quite a bunch of people who are Jewish, especially because we have so many people that come in from New Jersey. And I have two close friends who have both gone on the birthright trip and said it was absolutely life-changing. So that is something that I would eventually like to do. So yeah, that's actually a good point to bring up. Thank you.
Glad to hear that. I think I agree with what they've said. I think it'll probably be a very good experience for you. So I've heard the same thing from everyone who's gone on one.
Yeah.
Anybody else? This is your chance. It's kind of interesting because just a few weeks ago, I see Vivian is here this morning. Vivian, one of our students who just graduated, she talked about being raised in the Methodist church, you know, what that was like for her. And so today we hear you coming to the Methodist faith, but coming from such a different background and you know, living between those two worlds. You know, that it's really interesting how everybody's experience can be so different, and yet we sort of end up in a very similar place, you know, and end up in this fellowship together. So isn't that cool? I really like that. So
it is. I mean, it's crazy how I've had so many different pathways with religion and still ended up, you know, here I am. But you know, and same with other people, like discussing, we all end up in the pretty much same pathway. And even talking to people who are different religions, there's so many similarities in like foundational beliefs that it's kind of cool to have experience in so many different religions, because I just feel like I can ask more about it, like especially someone who might be fully Jewish. I'm like, oh, my mom's like, you know, Jewish, so I'm like partially Jewish. I was raised partially Jewish, like, you know, what kind of stuff did you do? And then I'm like, you know, I compare it to what I did, and you know, it's just so crazy to see how it's all these different religions bring you to different pathways and form different friendships through them.
So you know, we heard you say earlier that, you know, shortly after I had to leave the church, that you also got disillusioned, and I don't blame you, because I know that you know, the church changed. I know that, and it's a completely different type of church now than it was when I was there. What are some of the things that you miss and that you're looking for in other churches?
Definitely the laid back atmosphere. Like I said, I identify definitely as, you know, very spiritual, and because my parents both have the mix of different religions in the household, it's hard for them to strictly conform to one religion as well. So when you were there, it was definitely so laid back, you didn't feel judged when you were there if you weren't that knowledgeable on something. And it was just a big community where you could just go and worship and not necessarily feel like you were being tested on your knowledge of the Bible. Um, I think that that's been our big struggles when we have gone to other churches, whether it's been a friend that invited us or us just looking at other churches. It's very theory based, scriptures are not only just read, but then it's, broken down and broken down and broken down into like an entire lecture. And, for you, it was just a lot more like we had the music, and then we would read about scripture and have a small lesson, but then, it was broken up with other things. And I just feel like we have not been able to find that. We talk about it all the time. Every time we try to look for a church, we're like, we're never going to find anything like when you were there. And, it's definitely, like you said, when you left, it changed. My parents and I always say that it fell apart. It just became such a strict place that, like, I feel like if we were to even go there, we would feel like we were out of place. And considering it used to be our old church, like, that's not how you should feel. So I feel like a church should be somewhere that someone could walk in off the street if they needed to and feel welcomed. And that's kind of not what we've been able to find. Is, it feels like you have to know, it's like you have to know a certain amount to be able to feel like you belong there. And that's not how we felt at your church. So
that is so sad for me to hear that there aren't more churches that are welcoming like that, and non-judgmental. Because I mean, gosh, this is how Jesus experienced when I read the scriptures. How can any church not be like that? Non-judgmental and welcoming. I mean, those are like two fundamentals, for
exactly.
Yeah.
I know, like they welcome you at the door and they're like, oh, we're so glad to see you. But then when you sit down and they start going into it, it's not something that anyone could just walk in and participate in. It's,
you feel like you're stumbled upon a club where you have to have
exactly
knowledge to be accepted fully. Yeah. I know. It's unbelievable. It
really is. I know, that's why we just kind of, I don't want to say we gave up, but like we just kind of stopped searching because we were like, this is impossible. Even people said, oh, our church is so laid back. We were like, oh, let's give it a try. It was nothing like nothing like what we had with you. And that's why when I stumbled upon the CD that from the old church, I was like, oh, like this like brings back so many memories. I like remembered all the songs too. Like it was a good time.
Yeah, we had some really great worship times and the fellowship times. It was great. So Sarah, one personal question I had for you is, so Sarah's dad actually had, I think it was a brain attack, right?
Yeah, hemorrhage
years ago, and actually I remember us praying for him when he was in the hospital in a coma, and it didn't look good at all for him to ever wake up again. But then he did, and God answered our prayers. But he did lose a lot of his function, especially in the first year or two. And so I was wondering if that was something that also influenced you in terms of your career decision to become a nurse.
Oh, 100%. We, especially because for all of you guys, I'm an only child, so it was just me, my mom, and my dad, and my mom working. And so a lot of the time when my dad came home, I was helping to take care of him, and he had to relearn how to walk and talk, like everything all over again. So it was definitely a big factor of not only being in the hospitals all the time, but helping him out. I just learned so much and appreciated so much the medical community. And actually, when they said that the one half of his body he was never going to regain feeling back in, there was a nurse that took her free time and sat with him and like just talked to him and said, come on, just wiggle a finger or toe. And like, she didn't have to. It was not part of her instruction. It was literally on her spare time in between seeing patients, and she got him to wiggle a finger, and it was the tiniest little movement, but that's what started him then being able to gain function back. And I just have so much appreciation for people in the medical community that take time and actually, sit with their patients and are willing to go above and beyond what is laid out in the medical standards of their practice. And like, Pastor Frank said, is that he played such a big role too. I remember like the one Christmas, they showed up at our house Christmas caroling, like, they're just such a big part of helping our family get through it. Everyone was making homemade dinners for us. And so definitely all of that was a big help. And between the medical staff being so amazing and him and the church community being so amazing, it just definitely helped our family a huge amount.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah, for talking to us. You have really inspired my heart. I know that, and I'm sure you have inspired everybody here. Is there, before we let Sarah go, is there any other question? Well, you even answered all of our questions. What about that? We so appreciate you.